The lady-in-waiting for Princess Margaret describes her 34-year adulterous relationship. One of the last times Lady Anne Glenconner spent with her husband of 54 years she can remember with great clarity. The 90-year-old, who served as Princess Margaret's lady-in-waiting for 30 years, took care of Lord Colin Tennant, the Viscount Glenconner, as he fought prostate cancer. To Fox News Digital, she remembered, "We had separate bedrooms. I was furious. I was sobbing in private at the time. He couldn't hear that," I reasoned. He did. When he entered, he gave me an embrace. He caressed me for the first time in years. "Was it all terrible, Anne?" he questioned. "Of course it wasn't all terrible," I responded. "It was mostly good. But it was incredibly moving. I've always kept that in mind. And it was a wonderful thing to happen." At her 1953 coronation, Lady Anne Glenconner served as one of Queen Elizabeth II's Ladies of Honor. At the age of 83, the British nobleman passed away in 2010. Glenconner, who wrote a book in 2020 about her friendship with Queen Elizabeth II's younger sister, has written a follow-up published on February 21 titled Whatever Next? Lessons from an Unexpected Life, which details her troubled marriage. Glenconner made the decision to eventually share her story after being motivated by Queen Consort Camilla and her work with domestic violence victims. She claimed that her 3 daughters approved of her choice. Her 2 oldest boys died in the 1990s. The lady-in-waiting for Princess Margaret says the Queen did not believe in divorce. She had no other option. In 1953, Queen Elizabeth II was proclaimed. Glenconner acknowledged, "In my first book, I made light of a number of things. I didn't say everything I really wanted to say. But, I assumed the Queen Consort, who has done so much for abused women and battered wives, had an influence on me. I also spoke with my kids. That's why I did it." The 5th Earl of Leicester's oldest daughter is the former Lady Anne Coke. The Queen and Margaret were childhood friends of Glenconner, the 5th Earl of Leicester's oldest daughter. She later went on to serve as Maid of Honor at the 1953 coronation of the monarch. In 1956, Margaret's charming and charismatic acquaintance Tennant was wed to Glenconner. In 1956, Baroness and Glenconner wed Colin Tennant. She remarked, "He was quite distinct from anyone I'd ever met. He was attractive, he was funny. He had so many brilliant ideas, and he simply helped me realize that my existence could be different. It might be a fantastic experience. And I fell head over heels for him." He was Princess Margaret's best buddy as well. One of the young males she hung out with was him. "And I've always found it rather amazing that he picked me and actually wished to wed me. And a lot of the time we were very happy." Glenconner, however, claimed that she quickly recognized her spouse's negative traits. "Before we got married, I had witnessed him lose his temper," she claimed. "He always said, 'The minute we're married, I won't need to lose my temper,' which I naturally accepted. But on our vacation, he snapped. His promise of not to lose his temper didn't last long." Princess Margaret's acquaintance Colin Tennant and Lady Anne Coke making an engagement announcement on December 16, 1955. Glenconner claimed that Tennant assaulted him bodily when they were alone. He occasionally had violent episodes, according to her. According to reports, he yelled at her and threw objects at her. In the book, she made the allegation that he once beat her with a stick, rendering her deaf in one ear. She insisted that the incidental assault never happened again. She also had a suspicion that he had once tainted her drink to help her unwind in bed. With their first child Charles, Colin Tennant and Baroness Anne Glenconner left the London nursing home. She said, "The problem was one never knew when he would lose his temper. And being around him became extremely tiring as a result." Glenconner claimed that throughout her marriage, she felt like she was treading on eggshells. Barbara Barnes, the family's nanny, who later went on to care for Princes William and Harry, shielded the young children from learning about the turbulent marriage. The waiting lady for Princess Margaret shames the new generation of royals as being spoiled, a lot different. Later, Prince William and Prince Harry's royal nannies were Princess Diana and then Prince Charles, who selected Barbara Barnes. I guess I was raised quite conventionally, she thought. We were taught to stick with tasks when we were young. You're married, Anne, you'll go right back, my mother said when I once went to her and said, "Look, I don't think I can cope." I did, too. And as you probably know, when I was young, there weren't as many divorces. We persisted with it. We attempted to maximize the situation. Glenconner claimed that Tennant had a large number of women. She sought support from a close friend who was married in order to manage. It led to a 34-year relationship. Glenconner is unidentified with her partner. She confessed, "I lost my faith in men. We had a weekly meeting. We had brunch together and the odd weekend. But he restored my faith in him. And I came to understand that males can be wonderful, kind, and all that. He significantly impacted my existence." To deal with her turbulent marriage, Baroness and Glenconner engaged in an affair that lasted for decades. She claimed that wealthy people frequently engage in agreements like this. Glenconner claimed that the plan was known to her lover's wife. She noted that affairs among the upper class were very prevalent. And when the unidentified man was dying, his wife asked Glenconner to attend his funeral. Bonnie Bartlett Daniels, star of Street Elsewhere, contemplates a previous open marriage that was very hurtly. Glenconner said, "I didn't realize she was going to ask me, but I was so pleased when she did. She sent me a keepsake after he passed away. She most likely had some of her own, in my opinion." Marriages used to be conducted in this manner. Really, that is how they preserved relationships. There were relationships. Nevertheless, we continued. Divorce was an option here. Glenconner also found comfort in Margaret's companionship, who was going through her own marital difficulties. Before divorcing in 1978, she and the Earl of Snowdon each had their own adulterous relationships. In the West Indies, Princess Margaret is pictured in the middle with Lord Colin Tennant and Lady Anne Glenconner. The regal yacht Britannia can be seen in the distance. She said, "Princess Margaret knew Colin had a bad attitude. In front of her, he used to get angry. She was aware of it. He once treated me especially poorly, and I broke down in tears. There is absolutely no sense in crying," she told me. "Let's go. Man up, I say." She was very down to earth. "You mustn't let him see he has this impact on you," she admonished. "You must become more powerful." She herself was in a very challenging union. And I shared a home with her for a lovely year. We would just keep talking. She concluded by saying, "I really liked having you, Anne, as I departed. We got along great. Much better than our terrible spouses, in fact. We couldn't help laughing. You simply must chuckle. Life would not be feasible otherwise." Princess Margaret, 1930–2002, and Colin Tennant, 3rd Baron Glenconner, in February 1989 on Mystique, an island in the Caribbean that Glenconner holds. Glenconner lived in England during the last years of her marriage while her spouse remained in the West Indies. Tennant invested a sizable portion of his fortune in turning the tiny Caribbean island of Mystique into a party destination for the rich and renowned. The New Yorker claimed that in 1958, he spent close to $54,000 on the island. "A lady-in-waiting is what?" she said. "I remained with Colin. Though we were wed for 54 years, I wouldn't advise it to anyone else. However, I believe that we particularly got lucky near the end. We didn't have a lot of time together. 2 or 3 times per week, we spoke on the phone with each other." Around 1973, Colin Tennant and his wife Anne were on the island he owned, Mystique. Glenconner, however, claimed that her husband's death dealt her a final setback. He reportedly removed her from his will and gave a significant portion of his wealth to his loyal servant Kent Otto Nye. A legal dispute with Tennant's grandson followed as a consequence. "I more or less got over everything else," she said. "The children and I should have received all of his personal belongings. And I found that bothersome. I really couldn't believe it and didn't know how to handle it. After 7 years, we filed a lawsuit, and my grandchild won back half of the money. So, something was recalled." Glenconnor's existence has been wonderful so far today. She has received countless emails from women who have also experienced marital difficulties since sharing her story. She has written 2 historical books as well. A list of contact information is provided in her most recent book for those going through a difficult period, including Safe Lives, an organization the Queen Consort supports. Lady Anne Glenconnor was moved to share her story by the Queen Consort Camilla. "I've never been happier," she proclaimed. "It can be challenging to end a marriage for a variety of factors. And I hope that by sharing my story, others will understand they are not alone."